this car from new. Comes apart like a Meccano set. Able to just, there we go, fingers crossed. Hi and welcome to Sam's Garage. This channel's been 22 years in the making. From some friends and family, it kind of encouraged me that I should start documenting the cars I build. And so today we're going to start with this one. This is my 2003 Sylva Mojo 2. I built this car from new, so it's only ever had one owner. I was fortunate enough back in 2002 to 2003 to work for Sylva. I moved up to Lincolnshire and spent a year working on these cars, and this is what I brought back with me. Now, this isn't actually how it was when I brought it back. As you can see, over the years, the car has gone through a number of different looks, colour schemes. I've made modifications to the body. It's been so much fun, and every time I finish her, she just looks like a different car, and I just fall back in love with it. So this car, as it stands, is actually worth probably about £5,000. So £5,000 is still, you know, a fair amount of money, but over 22 years, I'd say it's pretty cheap. The engine is out of an old Ford Mondeo from the 90s. It's a 2-litre Z-Tech. It's 130 brake, and it's got some big carburetors on it, so it's actually 150. It doesn't sound like a lot of power, but when the car only weighs 500 kilos, it's actually quite a lot of fun. So these are actually really easy to work on. They're not complicated in the slightest. You don't have to be a mechanic to work on them. Yes, you're going to have to learn a few bits and pieces, but ultimately super easy. You're going to have it MOT'd anyway, so you know it's going to be safe when it goes on the road, but I think it's probably easier if I actually just take it apart and start showing you how it works. And then we're going to rebuild it. We're going to change the colours. We're going to make a few additions. There's a few things I want to fix. There's paint that's gone, and there's a bit of surface rust coming through in places. I just thought it would be fun to take this apart and show that, even though I'm not a mechanic, you really can look after something like this yourself. So now I need to change my clothes. So we're going to start by taking the splitter off, and then we're going to take off the bonnet, and then we're going to take off the back end. I would like to say a big thanks to my buddy Dan, who has kindly, try not to make loads of noise while I'm doing this, has kindly lent me his drive and the garage you'll see later on, so we can do all this filming. So big thanks, Dan, because I just wouldn't have had the space to do all of this. So let's get this off. These are just stainless steel 10mm bolts, M10 bolts, which and pretty much the whole car's put together with them, so they don't rust. Okay, there you go, just 2 prongs welded to the chassis that hold the splitter on the front, so these are nice and strong. And take these off. This is what the bonnet hinges on by. Oh, Bennett, how long is this bolt?
4 hours later.
That's that off. Take the pins out on the front. And actually, somewhere around here, I've got my my bonnet stay. Yeah. Here you go. Height of modern technology. Bonnet stand. One of the jobs to do is actually to put some struts on this, so I don't have to keep using that. So that is the connectors. So now we should be able to just, there we go, lift the bonnet off. So what we've got in here, I've got something to point with. Petrol tank, battery. This is the fuel pump. Now, one of the things I noticed the other day was this fuel line is actually quite cracked, and I actually only replaced it a year or 2 ago, so I'm not too sure why it's got to that. But you can see there's bits of rust on the surface. This fuel line definitely needs replacing. I will check this one. Actually, I can see it's cracked there as well, so these ones need to be replaced pretty urgently. You've got your steering column coming down through here to your steering rack. Your water line's going to your radiator, and obviously your fan on the front, and then the electrics running to the lights. So there's really not a lot to it. It doesn't have ABS or power assisted brakes or anything like that. So it is really simple. The brakes on this came off a Ford Sierra, which for those of you old enough to remember what a Ford Sierra was, it was a big family saloon, which weighed probably 13, maybe 14, 1500 kilos. So it had the stopping power to stop that. So when you put it on something that's half a ton, it stops pretty well. So as we work through the car, what I'm going to actually do now is take out the seats, so you can see how simple it is in here. Take off the seat belts, take off some of the trim, and then we're going to move to taking off the back end as well. It comes apart like a Meccano set. I'm doing this so cack-handed, reaching across the car. Oh, I've had so much fun working on this car over the years. Right, so I'm going to take the seat out. And one of the things I wasn't overly happy with when I put this in last time were the brackets for the seats. I did the best I could at the time, but I'm going to remake those because they move a little bit. The seat actually sits in very snug, but at the top end it moves a little bit. Seat belts, one seat. I'm not actually keeping a record at the moment, but we will put somewhere up on the screen how long it's taken to get from driving the car in to like where we are now and then actually taking the whole thing apart. So you have an idea of just how easy it is to take this apart. This is a heat shield that I've put on the back of the seat against this. This is a plyboard seat. You know, it's 5 or 6 millimeter plyboard that I've wrapped and then put a heat shield on the back, and obviously the exhaust system's wrapped as well, so it means the heat doesn't make its way through. Another thing we're going to change, this seat was taken from a different car, from a friend's car. Well, that's not wanting to come out, so I suppose we should unbolt them from the car. These bolt points down here have to go into the chassis, so they go through the ply liner here and then actually into threads on plates that are welded to the chassis, so they're super secure, same as the ones at the top. Right. Let's get these all out. These odd little bolts, bits of carpet. What should we do next? Take the bolts out off here. Just going to take everything off. I think we should be able to get some new ones of these, but they've got a special thread on them when they go into the chassis, but it would be nice to get something that's not going to rust. I know these ones were zinc coated or something, but it would be nice them not to look like that. I'm really trying to remember what happens here. Oh, there we go. So inside here is like, well, it's the best thing I could find at the time. I'd like to have something machined that's smaller and more dainty, but I wanted just a knob underneath the dashboard where I could just turn it, and for the lights, for the dip beam, the main beam, etc., etc. And this has got like a little release pin on it. Unbolt that. There we go. That comes off the back. We'll just put that back on so I can find it later. To make this slightly easier, instead of doing it by hand, we can use one of these. So this is a great little drill, and my kids love playing with it because it's small enough for them to hold. I bought these nice little convenient nets here for just putting things in when you're driving. I have never used them once. We've got it sitting on gravel at the moment, and normally what you would do to take off the back end is there are a couple of bolts down here, down the side of the wing on both sides, and one down the side here, and then a big pin on the top, and another couple of pins at the back. And you would jack the car off, take the wheel off, and you jack the car up and jack the car off. That's not. Normally, if you want to take the back end off the car, you jack it up, take a wheel off, and you can access a couple of bolts on the inside. I wanted to make it more simple. There used to be about a dozen bolts that held the wings on. Now that's all fiberglass in there. I think there's 2 here, 1 at the bottom, the main pin on the top and the main pin on the other side, which means there's 5 bolts on each side. So just comes out like that. Okay, so just taking the bolts out of the wing. This is annoyingly difficult to get to because we're not doing it with the wheels off, but it isn't impossible because I have had to do it before. I think we're there. Right. So now you can see that the wing's coming off here, and it's held on by this pin here and one at the back. So that's one side. So now we're going to do the same for the interior on the other side. Release the bolts, and then we'll be good to take the back end off. There we go. So that one's out. That's not going to need to be replaced, but we will probably retrim it. Note to self, make the access holes bigger when I'm working under the car next time. Okay, so these bolts have basically got a cap over them. It's just to basically tidy them up. It was kind of the easiest way to actually like bolt the back end of the car in place. There's a bolt either side that is going through a plate on the chassis, which will show you when the car back end is off, the clamshell's off. Okay, so 2 nuts off the back. So at the back here, I was trying to work out the best way of doing this because, again, I didn't want loads of bolts and braces and bits and pieces. So what we've got is 2 pins that come off the back of the chassis. So basically you have to feed the clamshell onto these first and then up over the pins at the top, and that's how you basically release it from the car. And that's those off. There we go. Okay, so the back end's off, and then I've just got to disconnect the electrics for the rear lights. And then, fingers crossed, got to get it over the exhaust. How's that? That is pretty much most of the car apart in, I don't know, an hour and a half, something like that. So now we can access basically everything to work on the car. Now normally when I'm working on the car, I don't actually need to take this much off. I'll be working on the back end. The carburetors obviously I can access without even taking the back end off, but say I had to work sort of further down in here, I would just take the back end off the car. And actually that on its own, you know, took probably 7 or 8 minutes. And now I'm into it, and you can do, you know, the auxiliary belt, and I can get down to the cables down here into the drive shafts, and I can get into the wheels. And this obviously, once it's jacked up and the wheels aren't on it, you can get to it even better. But that is basically it. So we've taken the car apart, or most of it apart. We are going to take the tub off the car because I said we're going to respray it, and there are bits that I want to, you know, fix some of the body work. It is probably 5 years since I sprayed this, 4 or 5 years since I sprayed this. So we do need to take this apart. The next is to get the car into the workshop, because then we can jack it up, we can get the wheels off it, and we can actually start repairing some of these things that need doing. So I suppose that's kind of the first video. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've tried to cut out a lot of the nonsense and bits and pieces and kind of make it as quick as we can. But as you can see, it's a very, very simple vehicle. If you're at all interested in having something that you just want to have a bit of fun in and is not going to be your daily driver, and you can kind of learn basic mechanics and electrics, I would really, really recommend one of these. They're not cheap. I would really, really recommend one of these. They're not expensive to insure. As I said, all the parts are cheap, and they're really, really good fun. And we're going to try and cut in a bit of footage of actually driving this. But for now, I just say thank you so much for watching. And I would also say a massive thank you to my friends and family who've encouraged me to do this. And a thank you to all those petrol heads on YouTube that have done these channels, which I watch all the time. I'm not going to mention names because that's a bit crass, but you know who you are. You are absolutely amazing to watch. You've inspired me, and now I'm doing it myself, and I hope a few of you will come along for the ride, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.